July 3, 1940. The harbor at Mers-el-Kebir shimmers in the late afternoon heat. The water so still it mirrors the hulls of 4 French battleships perfectly. Aboard the Dunkirk, sailors finish their evening meal, cigarette smoke drifting through open portholes. Some write letters home. Others play cards in the shade of the gun turrets. 3 weeks ago, these men were allies of Britain, fighting side by side against Germany. Today, British warships sit just beyond the harbor boom, their guns trained on the French fleet. At 1754, the British ships open fire. The first salvo screams overhead, a sound like tearing metal. Sailors freeze mid-sentence, cards scattering across tables. The second salvo hits. 15-inch shells punch through the Britannia's armor, detonating deep inside her hull. The explosion lifts her bow out of the water. Men tumble across tilting decks, grabbing for anything fixed. Another salvo. The Britannia's forward magazine ignites, a pillar of orange flame erupting from her deck. She rolls to port, capsizing in less than 4 minutes. Over 1,000 men are trapped inside. If you're already shocked by this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever heard about Mers-el-Kebir. Subscribe, because this is one of World War II's most tragic and controversial moments that changed everything. The harbor erupts into chaos. Shells rain down every 20 seconds. The Provence takes multiple hits, her deck torn open, fire spreading. The Dunkirk tries to return fire, but her guns can barely elevate enough to reach the British ships positioned outside the harbor. Sailors abandon their posts, diving into water that's becoming thick with oil and debris. The Strasbourg, engines already running, makes a desperate dash for the harbor entrance. British shells chase her through the smoke, geysers of water erupting around her hull as she breaks for open sea. In 15 minutes, it's over. 1,297 French sailors are dead or dying. The Britannia lies capsized, only her hull visible above water. The Provence and Dunkirk burn, listing heavily. Only the Strasbourg escapes, racing toward Toulon with British shells still splashing in her wake. The water burns. Oil slicks catch fire, spreading across the harbor. Men swim through flames, their uniforms soaked with fuel. Some make it to shore. Many don't. The screaming carries across the water to the British ships, where sailors stand silent at their posts, watching the destruction they've caused. This is not a battle between enemies. This is Britain attacking France, her ally of just 3 weeks ago. And in a mountain retreat in Bavaria, Adolf Hitler receives the news with something close to delight. Drop a comment and tell me what you think about what Britain did. Was it justified? Was it murder? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the story of how we got here is even more complex.
To understand how it came to this, you have to go back 24 days, June 9th, 1940. The German army is crushing France. Panzer divisions that broke through at Sedan have reached the Seine. Paris will fall in 5 days. The French government is fleeing south to Bordeaux, burning documents, preparing for the unthinkable. The Third Republic, which has stood since 1870, is collapsing. But France still has one asset that terrifies both Germany and Britain: the 4th largest navy in the world. The French fleet is magnificent. 2 new battleships, the Dunkirk and Strasbourg, are among the fastest capital ships afloat. The Richelieu and Jean Bart, still being fitted out, mount 15-inch guns that can match anything the Germans or Italians have. Add 4 older battleships, 7 heavy cruisers, dozens of destroyers and submarines, and you have a force that could shift the balance of power in the Mediterranean completely. Winston Churchill knows this. He's been Prime Minister for less than a month, thrown into office as France collapsed. Britain stands alone now, facing a German army that has conquered Poland, Norway, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, and France in less than a year. The Royal Navy is Britain's lifeline, her only real defense against invasion. If the French fleet falls into German hands, if those ships join the Kriegsmarine and the Italian Regio Marina, the Mediterranean becomes an Axis lake. British convoys from Egypt and India become impossible. Malta falls. The Middle East oil fields become vulnerable. Churchill watches France die and sees a nightmare scenario unfolding. Admiral François Darlan, commander of the French Navy, makes a promise. He tells the British that whatever happens, whatever armistice terms Germany demands, the French fleet will never serve Germany. If necessary, he will scuttle every ship rather than let them fall into enemy hands. He gives his word as an officer. Churchill doesn't trust promises anymore. He's watched too many nations fall, too many assurances prove worthless. June 22nd, the armistice is signed in the same railway car where Germany surrendered in 1918. Hitler personally chooses the location, savoring the symbolism. The terms are harsh but calculated. Germany will occupy northern France and the entire Atlantic coast. The French government, now led by Marshal Philippe Pétain, the hero of Verdun, will administer the southern zone from the spa town of Vichy. France will pay occupation costs of 400 million francs per day. The army will be reduced to 100,000 men. And the fleet? Article 8 states that French warships will be demobilized and disarmed under German or Italian supervision. Germany solemnly declares it has no intention of using the French fleet for its own purposes during the war. Churchill reads the terms in London and doesn't believe a word of it. Hitler's solemn declarations have proven worthless before. He promised not to remilitarize the Rhineland, then did it. He promised Czechoslovakia was his last territorial demand, then took Poland. Why would his promise about the French fleet be any different?
But he cannot, will not, accept the British ultimatum. To do so would be to betray France. Holland tries a different approach. What about the third option? Sail to Martinique, demilitarize there, sit out the war in the Caribbean. It's a compromise. The ships would be out of German reach, but France would retain ownership. Gensoul considers this. For a moment, Holland thinks he might accept. But then Gensoul shakes his head. He has no authority to make such a decision. He would need approval from Vichy. That could take days. Holland returns to the British ships with nothing. Somerville signals London again, explaining that Gensoul seems willing to consider the Martinique option, but needs time to get authorization. The response from Churchill is unambiguous. Quote, "Time is up. If the French have not accepted terms by 1730 hours, open fire." Unquote. Somerville has less than 2 hours. He signals Gensoul one final time. Accept the terms or face attack. Gensoul signals back, "I will defend my ships." At 1730, Somerville gives the order to prepare for battle. But he delays another 24 minutes, hoping against hope for a last-minute change. French reconnaissance planes have spotted his force. Gensoul is raising steam, preparing to sortie. If the French ships get out of the harbor into open water where they can maneuver, this becomes a running battle that could last hours and spread across the Mediterranean. Somerville can't wait any longer. At 1754, Force H opens fire.
The massacre and Hitler's delight. The Hood fires first, 15-inch shells arc through air. Valiant and Resolution follow, salvos timed to hit in sequence. The Bretagne takes first hits. Shells penetrate deck armor, explode inside, tear through compartments. Within minutes, she's on fire, bowed to stern. Another salvo hits near forward magazine. The explosion is catastrophic. The entire front third disintegrates in a fireball rising hundreds of feet. The shockwave shatters windows in Oran 3 miles away. The Bretagne rolls over, capsizes. 977 men trapped inside. The Provence takes multiple hits. Shells tear through superstructure, destroy fire control, kill bridge crew. She's burning, listing to starboard. Her crew fights to save her. Flood compartments, battle fires. But British fire is relentless, methodical, devastating. The Dunkirk tries fighting back. Forward turrets swing toward British ships. She fires, but range is too great, angle too steep. Shells fall short, throwing up water geysers. British shells hit her in return, smash into stern, destroy rudder, jam propellers. She's immobilized. The Strasbourg makes a run for it. Captain Collinet kept steam up all morning, anticipating this. First shells hit, he orders full speed. The Strasbourg accelerates toward harbor entrance, engines driving nearly 30 knots. British shells chase her, hitting water around her, some striking stern. One penetrates deck but fails to explode. She races through the entrance, past wrecked Bretagne, past burning Provence, into open water. Ark Royal launches torpedo bombers, 6 swordfish biplanes carrying 18-inch torpedoes. They attack as Strasbourg runs east. Her anti-aircraft guns blaze, shoot down one swordfish. Other torpedoes miss. She escapes, reaching Toulon 2 days later. Back in harbor, killing continues. Dunkirk hit repeatedly, fires raging. Provence listing heavily, takes more hits. Crew abandons ship, jumps into water thick with oil and burning debris. 1804. 10 minutes after firing began, Somerville orders ceasefire. The harbor is devastation. Bretagne gone, only hull visible. Provence beached, burning. Dunkirk immobilized, on fire, stern nearly underwater. Over 1,200 French sailors dead, hundreds wounded, burned, trapped in flooded compartments. British sailors watch the harbor burn. Some cry, others vomit over the side. They've just killed allies, men they fought alongside weeks ago. French survivors in water scream curses at British ships. Some shake fists. Others float, too shocked to move, staring at wreckage. Somerville orders Force H to withdraw to Gibraltar. He'll write this was the most distasteful task he ever performed. Many officers agree. They followed orders, did their duty, but they'll carry this memory forever. Hit that subscribe button right now, because Hitler's reaction to this reveals everything about how he saw the war. News reaches London within hours. Churchill addresses Parliament July 4th, explains necessity, strategic imperative, threat posed by the French fleet. The House of Commons gives him a standing ovation. Britain stands alone against Germany. Churchill showed he'll do whatever necessary to survive. The attack proves Britain is serious. We'll fight on no matter the cost. But news also reaches Berlin. Hitler is at the Berghof, his mountain retreat in Bavaria. He receives word of the attack. Initial reaction, surprise. He didn't expect the British to do something so ruthless, so willing to alienate a former ally. But surprise quickly turns to satisfaction. Multiple sources describe his response as pleased, even gleeful. He saw the attack as confirmation of things he long believed. First, the British were as ruthless as he was, willing to do whatever necessary for survival. This pleased him because it validated his worldview. The British built their empire through force and cunning, not moral superiority. Now they'd proven it by attacking their own ally. Second, the French were weak, defeated. They'd allowed the British to destroy their fleet without meaningful resistance. Strasbourg escaped, yes, but 3 capital ships destroyed or disabled. If France couldn't protect her own navy, how could she claim to be anything but defeated?
Third, most importantly for propaganda, Britain was desperate. A confident nation doesn't attack allies. Mers-el-Kebir could be portrayed as desperation, proof Britain knew she was losing. Hitler immediately ordered Goebbels to exploit it. Within hours, German radio broadcast news of British massacre of French sailors. Newspapers ran headlines about British treachery. The attack compared to colonial atrocities, portrayed as typical imperial ruthlessness. Goebbels understood the value. Here was a chance to drive wedges between Britain and potential allies, show the world Britain couldn't be trusted. Comment below if you think Churchill made the right call. Was it necessary evil or just murder? Let's debate this. But Hitler's satisfaction went deeper than propaganda. He'd gambled the French fleet wouldn't be a problem. Article 8 was deliberately vague, designed to keep fleet in French hands but under German supervision. Hitler had no immediate plans to seize the ships. That would provoke resistance he wanted to avoid. Better let France keep their fleet demobilized and watched. Now the British solved that problem for him. They'd attacked France, killed French sailors, turned French public opinion violently anti-British. The Vichy government, already collaborating with Germany, now had genuine grievance. French newspapers called for revenge. French politicians who'd argued for continued resistance were silenced. How could France ally with Britain after this? Hitler's satisfaction was strategic. Mers-el-Kebir made his position in France more secure. Reduced chance of French resistance, of French colonies defecting to Britain, of a French government in exile gaining legitimacy. The British did his work for him. Within days, Hitler was using the attack in rhetoric. In conversations with foreign diplomats, he pointed to Mers-el-Kebir as proof of British perfidy. Meeting potential allies, he cited it as evidence Britain would betray anyone to serve her interests. The attack became standard German propaganda for the rest of the war. But Hitler also understood implications for his own strategy. Churchill showed he'd take extreme measures. The attack demonstrated Britain wouldn't negotiate, wouldn't accept compromise peace, would fight on regardless of odds. Hitler hoped France's defeat would convince Britain to seek terms. Mers-el-Kebir proved otherwise. The attack both pleased and concerned him. It validated his view of British ruthlessness, but it also suggested the war wouldn't end quickly. Britain, isolated and outmatched, was going to fight. That meant Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, would be necessary. A longer war, more resources, more risk. If this is blowing your mind, smash that like button and share this with someone who needs to understand how complex World War II actually was. The aftermath rippled outward for years. In France, the attack became a rallying point for Vichy propaganda. Posters showed British ships firing on French sailors. Newspapers ran stories about victims, families, sacrifice. The attack was used to justify collaboration with Germany, argue Britain, not Germany, was France's real enemy. When the Allies landed in North Africa in 1942, French forces initially resisted, partly because of Mers-el-Kebir memory. The bitterness lasted decades. French veterans of the attack refused to speak to British veterans. Families of the dead demanded apologies that never came. In Britain, the attack was portrayed as tragic necessity. Churchill defended it repeatedly, arguing Britain had no choice. Risk of French fleet falling to Germany too great. Most British public accepted this. The standing ovation in Parliament reflected genuine support. Britain was fighting for survival.
Mers-el-Kebir, however tragic, proved Britain would do whatever necessary. But within the Royal Navy, the attack left scars. Somerville never forgave Churchill for ordering it. He believed more time for negotiation might have worked, that Martinique option could have been accepted if given chance. Other officers agreed. They'd followed orders but questioned whether those orders were right. The strategic impact was mixed. The attack ensured French fleet wouldn't serve Germany. Dunkirk eventually repaired but never returned to full service. Provence scuttled in 1942 when Germany occupied southern France. Strasbourg scuttled at the same time. Richelieu and Jean Bart, incomplete, spent war in North Africa, then joined Free French forces. None of the ships Hitler might have seized ever served the Axis. But the attack also hardened Vichy collaboration with Germany, made French resistance more difficult, gave legitimacy to Pétain's government, complicated Allied relations with France for years. When Charles de Gaulle tried rallying French forces to continue fighting, Mers-el-Kébir was thrown in his face. How could France trust Britain after this? Before this video ends, like it if you believe history's complexity matters. Comment what you learned. Subscribe for more stories that refuse to be simple. The moral question remains unresolved. Was Churchill right? Did Britain have a choice? Could Gensoul have accepted one option? Could Somerville have waited longer? Historians still debate. What's clear, July 3, 1940 changed everything. It marked the moment Britain burned her bridges, when Churchill demonstrated Britain would fight alone if necessary, that no sentiment, no alliance, no friendship would stand in the way of survival. It was ruthless. It was tragic. It was perhaps necessary. And in Bavaria, Adolf Hitler watched it unfold and smiled. The British proven as ruthless as he was, the French proven broken, the war would continue longer, bloodier than anyone imagined. But for one moment, Hitler felt satisfied. Mers-el-Kebir confirmed everything he believed about power, about nations, about war. The burning harbor became a symbol. For Britain, resolve. For France, betrayal. For Germany, British desperation. And for 1,297 French sailors who died that day, a symbol of how quickly allies become enemies, how fast the world turns upside down, how war destroys not just enemies, but friendships, alliances, and trust. The water burned for hours. Oil fire spread across the harbor. Bodies floated among wreckage. The Britannia's capsized hull marked the grave of nearly 1,000 men. And somewhere in smoke and fire and death, the last illusions of the old world order burned away, leaving only the brutal arithmetic of survival. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more complex history. This story matters because it shows there are no clean choices in war, only impossible ones.